Yo, what's up, Turbo Speedsters? It's your boy, Coach Chris Turbo, aka Mr. Turbo Speed, aka Coach Chris Burris. And I wanted to thank you all for stopping by my channel. So if you're new, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and then do your coach a favor and turbo smack that like button and power punch that notification bell so that you can take advantage of all my coaching, training, speed enhancing videos here on YouTube. So today's video, we will be talking about the #1 speed, sprint specific, absolute strength, speed, strength, speed exercise you should be doing in the weight room to increase your sprinter speed and dominate on the track. Let's do it. Alright, Turbo Speedsters, so today's video, like I said, we'll be examining the #1 lift that you should be doing in the weight room because it's going to train your total body functionality and increase your sprinter speed from 0 to 100, going max speed, super turbo charged 100%, right? So, deadlifts to increase your sprinter speed. The #1 exercise that you should be implementing into your weight training programs that will directly correlate to your sprinter speeds out on the track. All right, so today's agenda looks as follows. We will be examining deadlifts to increase sprinter speed. We will take a look at the benefits of deadlifts, why deadlifts are called the king of all exercises, and how to maximize deadlifts for sprinter speed gains. And we will take a look at how to program deadlifts into your existing speed programs or create brand new speed training programs for the weight room to increase sprinter speed. The purpose of this video is to give you and provide key concepts regarding sprinter speed increases using the deadlift exercise. The scope of this video will include proper programming methodologies, which include daily, monthly, weekly, and yearly strategies for implementing deadlifts into your sprint training programs. The audience of this video is intended for anyone looking to increase their sprinter speed, coaches, athletes, parents, or anyone far and in between. So let's go ahead and get right into this video, all right? So the first thing we want to talk about are the benefits of deadlifts, okay? At a high level, benefits of deadlift for sprinter speed specific terminology here, you're going to increase your absolute power. So if you're programming correctly using either a phases style or a 52-week periodization style, if you don't know what I'm talking about, look down in the description. I'll link the video to 2 past videos talking specifically about programming for the weight room and periodization for the weight room. So you can increase your absolute power, okay? This is very beneficial because you know that as a sprinter, the more power you can exert back into the ground is going to directly correlate to how fast you're going to run, increasing stride rate and stride frequency and stride length, right? So increase absolute power. Another key benefit of deadlifts is going to be increased absolute strength. Again, absolute strength is correlated directly towards power and overall athletic performance. So you're going to get stronger if you if you use deadlifts. Deadlifts are going to improve top end speed. It's going to specifically work the posterior chain, and we'll get a little bit into that here in a second. You're going to use deadlifts to improve your explosiveness. All right. A couple of other benefits of deadlifts are that it's a multi-joint movement. Again, from some of my previous videos, and if you haven't heard me say this before, multi-joint movements are king when you're talking about sport-specific movements. All right, so you're not just going to use your bicep when you're, if you're sprinting. You're not going to be using just your hamstring or your quads when you're sprinting. It's a whole body exercise, a whole body activity sprinting is. So deadlifts are going to be a multi-joint movement. Another benefit you're going to see is that it can be adapted to meet any training goal. The versatility of the deadlift in its totality when you're programming it in the weight room is again, point number 2, we're going to talk about why it's the king of all exercises. Because it's versatility and you can adapt it to meet any training goal from strength, basic strength, hypertrophy, muscular endurance, stamina, balance coordination, all those cool things, right? So that's another benefit of deadlifts. One other benefit is that you're going to improve neuromuscular development, all right? So by implementing deadlifts into your training program, you're going to hardwire your brain so that it effectively is better at sprinting. You're able to fire your motor neurons in your mind and create those fast twitch muscle fiber reactions faster, all right? And the last benefit that we here at Team Turbo Speed like to kind of put out there is that deadlifts are going to improve your anaerobic response, okay? Sprinting from 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters, 40 meters, 50 meters, all the way up to about 400 meters is an anaerobic exercise. It's an anaerobic activity, okay? So by utilizing deadlifts inside the weight room, you're going to effectively improve your anaerobic response, thus making you a faster, stronger sprinter. So the next key point we want to talk about, why the deadlift is the king of all exercises and how you can maximize the deadlift to improve sprinter speed gains. All right, so essentially how you want to incorporate your deadlifts essentially is that you want to focus on the training goal. Okay, it all depends on where you're at in your training phase. If you're in the off season, if you're in season, if you're in preseason, if you're in a transition period, if you're in a competition phase, if you're in peaking, it all depends on that, right? So to maximize deadlifts so that you potentially run faster when you need to, aka inside of championship times or time trials or whatever you're trying to do, you need to make sure that you are training within your training goal and maximizing sets to reps and rest to hit the specific targets and training goal within that phase. All right, you want to use a variety of different deadlift varieties to elicit different target endpoints. Basically what that means is that because of the versatility of the deadlift, there's different stances that you can utilize to hit different training goals. There's different weights that you can use, different intensities that you can use, different movements such as eccentric, concentric, or isometric movements that you can utilize with the deadlifts so that you can ultimately hit your goals within your training phase, within your training goal, okay? You want to use assessments to track your progress, all right? There is no sense in utilizing any strength training program as a sprinter and if you're not tracking the progress. You know, you want to track on day 1, your 1 rep max in a deadlift is 100 pounds. Test again in 6 to 8 weeks, see where it's at. Test again in another 6 to 8 weeks, see where it's at. And if you're programming correctly, you should be hitting milestones that you're setting for yourself as an athlete, or if you're a coach, setting milestones per athlete, because every athlete's individual, even if you are a high school coach, because you can do it if you dedicate your time to your athletes. So keep that in mind, all right? So why is the deadlift considered the king of all exercises, right? Because it's going to work the posterior chain is posterior chain dominant, right? Sprinting is mostly this, okay? That's how you're going to generate most of your power. That's how you're going to generate most of your force application is through the posterior chain. Deadlift is going to work on all of that, all right? The number one thing that I think that why deadlift is the king of all exercises for sprinter speed is because it's a hip hinging exercise, okay? It incorporates triple extension. It's going to do this better than the squat, which is a knee hinging exercise, a knee flexion exercise. And it's going to work on your starting strength. It's going to work on your speed strength. It's going to work on your sport-specific movement towards sprinting. And it's going to work on your strength and maximal power, okay? These are all from one exercise, all right? To put this into perspective, hip hinging, what does that mean? So when you deadlift, right, you got your bar, you're deadlifting here, you're coming down and you're coming up, right? Hip hinging, hip hinging. We hear the term triple extension, right? When you're in your drive phase, acceleration phase, moving forward, applying force back into the ground, right? All that power and all that force is generated from one single movement, hips, right? You drive your knee up from your hips. Here, that's from the hips. You drive your knee back and essentially starting back from the hips. Here, it's coming back from the hips. Here, and you're jamming right back into the ground. This is contrast to people thinking that squat is going to be a more effective exercise for increasing sprinter speed. Why? Because think about it. When you squat, you're squatting down and you're using your knees. It's hinging at the knees. So you're squatting down, hinging at the knees, hinging at the knees, right? When you run, think about it. When you're in a drive acceleration phase, what's your knee doing? It's being swung up from the hips. You're not leading with your knee and applying force back down with your knee. It all starts from the hips. That's why deadlift is the #1 exercise that sprinters need to be utilizing in the weight room to effectively increase their turbo speed. And again, you can make it sport specific. So if you go here, starting strength, right? Starting strength can be correlated directly back to the block start. You're up and you're down, and then set. You come up at a static isometric hold, and then boom, you're out. You're out of the blocks. Starting strength. You can utilize the deadlift to focus on starting strength. Speed strength. Depending on the load that you're using, you're going to be using anywhere from 10% of your 1 rep max to 40% of your 1 rep max guidelines to utilize the speed strength aspect of the deadlift. This is going to build force production. This is power generation. This is rate of force development that you're going to be using. 10% to 40% to work on speed strength with the deadlift. Again, you can be working on maximal strength and maximal power development. As here's a couple of the benefits. You can load the bar at 87%, 80%, 85% to work on maximal strength week per week. Get stronger week per week. That is going to in turn allow you to have 1, stronger muscles, 2, stronger muscles create more force. You can apply that force back into the ground, effectively creating horizontal thrust and vertical propulsion to lift and drive yourself down the track, making you a faster turbo speedster in the 100, 200, 60-meter dash and 400-meter dash. The last section I want to talk to you guys about is how to program deadlifts to increase sprinter speed effectively in the weight room so that you're running faster on the track, right? So the first thing you need to do, coaches, athletes, or anyone looking to increase their sprinter speed, is to determine the training phase. Again, identify where you're at in your training. If you're just starting off, if you're in off season, if you're in preseason, if you're in late preseason, if you're in season phase, if you're in competition, if you're in transition, if you're in peaking. Identify the phase and then move from there. All right. Identify the training phase. Identify the training goal. Determine the training goal. Right. What are you doing within each phase that you're in to increase your sprinter speed? Essentially, what you're going to be looking for to do is holding assessments. This can be a 1 rep max test. This can be a speed test, anywhere from 0 to 60-meter dash test. A 100-meter dash test, a 200-meter all-out go, a 400-meter all-out go. Okay. Once you figure out and determine the training phase, the training goal, you need to go in and actually build your training approach. All right. So again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, look down in the description. I'm going to link the 2 videos that we talk about training for the weight room and periodization in totality for a turbo speedster. So you want to build a macro, meso, micro, nano level to align with your training protocols that you need to be looking at. So your training phase and your training goal. All right, so that's the core foundation, the fundamental bricklaying that you need to have laid out for you before you actually start programming for yourself and increasing your sprinter speed. All right, so an example of this type of methodology so that you get the most bang for your buck as a turbo speedster trying to increase your sprinter speed would be to take a look at this example. So let's just say we're in the off season. You just determine the training phase, right? The training goal is basically absolute strength. We want to get stronger, right? Summer is a time where we get stronger. We're going to limit hypertrophy, so we're not getting a lot of unneeded muscle mass, but staying relatively at optimal weight for you, an individual sprinter, because not everyone's going to have the most optimal weight for them. And as a coach, it's your job to figure that out. And as a sprinter, if you're an athlete, it's your job to figure that out, because you are you and you're not your neighbor, right? So it's the off season. We're going to actually try to determine our training goals. So we're going to do some assessments. We're going to do the 1 rep max for the deadlift. We're going to run a 20-meter dash, and we're going to do a 60-meter dash, full go, full recovery, so we can have a baseline to see where we're at, so we can test again in 6 to 8 weeks. All right, so our training goal is absolute strength. Okay, so we're going to do our meso level, which is basically going to be absolute strength for the lower body. That's our month-to-month goal, our month goal. Okay, and then we're going to do our micro level, which is going to be basic strength. Where we're going to be targeting our glutes, our hams, and our quads and our hip flexors. Okay, and this particular example, we'll take the nano level, which is going to be the daily goals, and we're going to work on hypertrophy and explosiveness for our daily session for this particular example. All right, and so what that would look like would be 3 sets of 8 to 10 at 10 to 40% of a speed deadlift. This is going to work on our nano goal of explosiveness. Okay, we're going to do that first. Why? Because in order of operations, or the order of exercises, we want to do the most energy dependent exercises first. And in our case, we're going to be working on the explosiveness for this session. So we want to do the explosiveness first, and then follow that up with the hypertrophy and muscle building and basic strength stuff. All right, so we're going to do the 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps of speed deadlifts from 10% to 40% of your 1 rep max with full recovery, because we're working at anaerobic ATP phosphagen pool, so we want to have 2 to 5 minutes of recovery. Then we're going to follow that up with 3 to 4 sets of 12 for deadlifts at 70 to 75% of the 1 rep max with 45 to 60 seconds rest. Okay, the rationale behind this is that 3 to 4 sets is optimal range for hypertrophy growth in the muscles, and 12 reps, 10 to 12 reps is the optimal range for muscular growth in the hypertrophy spectrum as well. And then the actual intensity, 70 to 75%, is optimal for hypertrophy and muscle growth within that. And then again, we're working a different energy system. We're not really necessarily working the ATP phosphagen system a little bit more. We're working the fast glycolytic, which still encompasses the anaerobic system, but we're going to do 45 to 60 seconds rest, and this is actually going to work on some of our endurance and stamina as well. Then when you knock out the core lifts, you always want to follow up with your auxiliary lifts. Okay, you want to have these auxiliary lifts are going to target the training goal. So for example, it will be something like for hypertrophy, you will do 3 by 12 sets, 3 by 12 reps of leg curl, leg extension, dumbbell squats, dumbbell walking lunges. Okay, and so for your explosiveness, the same thing. You can do something like 3 by 8 or 3 by 10 of an explosive lift, keeping the weight basically 20% or 10% to 40%. In an explosive movement like a tuck jump or a straight leg bound or a bounding sprinter bounds or plyometrics, box jumps, depth jumps, broad jumps, stuff like that. So turbo speedsters, if you take all of these things and you combine them into a program where you're deadlifting at least 3 times a week in the off season, and then use your protocols to build out your program for the subsequent training phases after an off season. All right, turbo speedsters, so that does it for today's video. I hope you found value in what I presented to you today. Deadlifts to increase sprinter speed, the benefits, why and how you can maximize sprinter speed gains, and how to incorporate speed training with deadlifts to increase your sprinter speed. So if you're new, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and then do your coach a favor and turbo smack that like button and power punch that notification bell so that you can take advantage of all my coaching, training, speed enhancing videos here on YouTube. And like I always say, turbo speedsters, don't go fast, go turbo.